Hey everyone, how you doing? This is Amon Green, Gourmet Packers all-time leading rusher, and you're watching Packers Total Access Live, your daily source for Packer content. Go Pack, go!
What's up, guys? Welcome into Packers Total Access. My name is Clayton. You can check us out on packernet.com. Find me on Twitter at Packers_access. We are flying solo as of the moment. Haven't heard from the guys yet. They may be in here momentarily, but if not, we're ready to roll and talk some Green Bay Packers. Had a lot of news drop today. Obviously, we had the Jaire Alexander situation come to an end, I guess you could say. We got a little bit of Elton Jenkins news. We got a bunch of great questions in the Patreon group, which we're going to hit on, talking a little bit specifically about the coverage unit, the cornerback room as it sits right now. We're getting a mixed bag of, like looking at the chat here pre-show, seems like there's more people upset than not. But if you go to Twitter and the Twitter poll, it's large majority agree with the Packers in this situation. It looks like actually last time I checked here, let me double check. Yeah, 95% of the votes here on YouTube are saying they agree with the Packers move as well. So let's just dive right into it as we get ready to Chris says Tim don't want anything to do with this episode. LOL. Tim, actually, we were chatting earlier today. Tim understands. Tim gets it. We all knew this was a possibility. I want to say this. This isn't a victory lap by no stretch. But I'm damn proud of how we covered this whole situation. We kind of read through the BS and caught on to a couple of good sources. And even though some of the Packer fan base was upset that these rumors were swirling about Jaire, we stuck to the people that had inside sources, which I'm just going to say it. Rob Domofsky caught a lot of hell over this story. He was the first one to talk about it. And they haven't came out and said it, but since I'm a fan and I'm not in the media, I can say it. I believe his source the whole time was Jaire Alexander, me personally, or at least his agent. So when fans came at Rob saying he's trying to run him out of town, it sounds like Jaire's camp was the one feeding him that information. Rob didn't say that. Reading the tea leaves, reading between the lines, that's who the inside source was there. So as a fan base, we need to slow our roll a little bit. We need a slower roll and stop going after people who are reporting on a team. And I've been guilty of it too, because sometimes it does feel like people are trying to drum up drama, but in all honesty, they're doing their job. And all I know is everybody who was calling out Rob, I don't see them apologizing to him today. So it is what it is, right? But with that being said, let's just dive into the information. All right. And again, Tim understands, Chris. Tim understands the whole situation. And that's what I was getting to. We covered this the whole way, and we told you when there was an update, we take a step back. I don't know. Maybe he is staying. Oh, LaFleur made a comment. That kind of felt like that's a positive, right? But at the end of the day, Brian Gutekunst gets final say, and this was a Goody move. Goody said it early on. If he's not going to be on the team, we want to make sure we get something for him. He didn't get nothing for him, but that comment is what people truly should have keyed in on, myself included, was him coming out in the public and saying that. And I want to give a shout out to Jason Wilde, because Jason Wilde said it from the beginning. He said, I've covered the team since 1996, and I have never heard a GM come out and make that kind of statement about a player. Basically saying, yeah, we need to get something for him because we've made an investment in him. And that should have been the tipping point of what Rob was saying, of like, hey, their plans are to move on. And you guys remember, Rob said 99.5% that Jaire will not be back. And then when it looked like it got back to Jaire potentially coming back to Green Bay, boy, oh boy, did everybody give him hell over that 99%. Well, he was right. So, it is what it is, right? Greg says, who in here was mad? Go up and look at the comments, bud. To me, it looked like there was several people in here that were making comments like they were ticked off about it. But, yeah, again, it shouldn't catch anybody off guard. It shouldn't. However, I remember J. Cole asked this earlier today as well. I think it might have been the Patreon group. I can't remember where it was. He says we couldn't move on sooner. There was no benefit to moving on sooner, Jay. And the reason being is if you cut loose of him sooner, then you lose out on the possibility of a team not getting a draft pick they want and saying, "Damn, we need corner now," and they have to go out and trade for a corner, right? And Jaire would have his value would have been elevated, right? There was absolutely no negative to keeping him this long. Matter of fact, like Brian Balaga and I think it was Hauser said, you could have ran this up to week 1 before the money was guaranteed, right? And then you could just kind of let him sit in the background like, hey, we still got him. So if anything, I kind of wish they would have held on to him until at least the start of training camp, in case, God forbid, something happens in minicamp and a player goes down with an injury for another team, and now all of a sudden there's an extra added market for Jaire Alexander. So that's kind of how I see that. So, yeah. Now debates, lots of people from Whoville commenting earlier. Wasn't that funny, Bates? You caught that too, didn't you? Like, I was looking up going, I've never seen these people before. And I shouldn't say this, but it looked like a couple burner accounts, did it not, Bates? And it reminded me of someone who used to be in here on a consistent basis. So anyway, Coach Lynn said we did Ja solid by releasing him now. I agree and I somewhat disagree, Coach. If you really wanted to do him a favor, you would have released him going into free agency, right? That way he would have been able to maximize his effort in trying to land with the team. But I also understand what you're saying there too, because if you hold him until training camp, then obviously that's really putting his back against the wall a little bit. So it's kind of a happy medium, I guess you could say. And again, they were looking to get something. Here's the other thing. They wanted him back. The Packers wanted him back for the right price, for what they considered the right price. Whether we agree with it or not, the Packers put a number on it and said, hey, look, we need to get this contract down to this point because he's missed so much time. And, kind of is what it is. So, yeah, but I can understand where you come from there, Coach, for sure. All right, let's get into it. So what I'm going to do here, guys, you know, Sports Talk has been all over this all day long. I'm going to try to give you a little bit different angle. I want to walk you through the entire process from today. We'll talk about salary cap ramifications. We'll talk about, on the next segment here in a second, we're going to talk about what the cornerback room looks like now. And someone had asked in the Patreon group about, coverage grades, things like that. We'll also talk about how effective or ineffective the Packers secondary was last year without Jaire Alexander, which I think you guys will be surprised on that as well. So anyway, here's how everything unfolded today. Ian Rappaport put the tweet out earlier today, about 9 hours ago. The Packers are releasing star cornerback Jaire Alexander today, sources say. Then Spot Track jumped right on it and said, the Packers are releasing cornerback Jaire Alexander, who had 2 years, $37 million remaining on his contract. The 28-year-old earned over $72 million in 7 seasons with Green Bay, leaving behind dead cap hits of $7.5 million in 2025 and $9.5 million in 2026. So it sounds like they chose to approach it from that direction where you're absorbing less of a cap hit this year. And that does kind of make you scratch your head a little bit. But at the same time, it doesn't matter whether, if you don't use that cap space this year, it rolls into next year. Okay. And I want to say this, Chris N asked a great question in our Patreon group asking about the salary cap situation for next year. He seemed to think, hey, are we kind of up against the gun next year in terms of the salary cap? And he said, Clayton, the Packers are up against a cap already for next season, right? Do you think Goot just wants to roll a majority of the $45 million into next year? As it sits right now, and I think the rollover cap is factored in real time. I could be wrong, but it's showing next year on Spot Track that we have $29 million in cap space next year. So as the roster sits right now, I would imagine that's factored in with the rollover cap. You're sitting at roughly $29 million right now. So yeah, you're not going to go out and spend that $45 million this year. And here's the other thing: who are you going to go get? Who do you want? And I've heard some people say Trey Hendrickson. Listen, if we weren't going to re-sign, if we weren't going to bring Jaire Alexander back on the deal we already agreed to, with him 28 years old with injury problems, you think we're going to bring in a 30-plus-year-old, right? Edge defender. Now, yes, he was the sack king last year. Absolutely. But my thing is, it's not about what we want. It's where's the precedent at? When was the last time Goody paid $30 to $40 million for a free agent, never happened, or trading for a player and then bringing them in, and then you tack on the 30-year-old effect, and then on top of that, Trey Hendrickson wants a new deal. That's the whole reason he's holding out in Cincinnati, right? Or not holding out, but I guess he's technically holding out. So are you going to give him an extension? If not, then he probably won't even agree to that trade, right? So it's kind of like the problem that we ran into here with Jaire is the main thing was they could not work out a deal. And we'll get to that here in a second. Like other teams couldn't even come to an agreement with Jaire, it sounds like, because that was a big factor there. It wasn't just so much about draft compensation. It was about, well, if he's not going to play in Green Bay at that number, he's not going to play there at that number. So if he's not going to get a deal that's worth it for him, then he'd rather just be released and he can pick where he goes, which I can understand that. So again, there's the salary cap ramifications. Now here we go. Cap space this year after the Jaire cut, the Packers have the fourth most amount of cap space at $45 million in cap space. Now, I've heard a lot of sports talk today. I think they were talking about Wildy and Tausch earlier today. And in no way is this meant to be disrespectful towards anybody's opinion that may have spoken on it today, but it turned into you can't say you're all in if you got that much cap space sitting in this year. Well, when you go into next year, obviously, if that is factored in the rollover cap for next year, you've got other contracts that are kind of coming due next year, right? And what I mean by coming due, like there's the cap hit's going to go up next year. So this isn't so much about, hey, let's go out and spend $45 million this year. It's probably somewhere in between. If there was a player you could sign, and again, we mentioned Trey Hendrickson, but guys, I could be wrong, but I don't see that happening. I just don't see that happening. Like I don't see the precedent. I personally would not do it. If I was the general manager and you say, Clayton, you can go trade a second-round pick, and that seems to be what Cincinnati's wanting for Trey Hendrickson. You can give up a second-round pick for a 30-year-old edge defender that you're going to have to give a 3 to 5 year contract for. That's going to be arguably the highest paid, at least top 3, maybe top 5 edge defenders in the league. You're setting yourself up to have a ton of dead cap at the end because he's liable to hit that wall. There's no way I would do that. Me personally, I just wouldn't. And again, you got to run everything through the filter of what did the team look like last year? Why did we lose to the Philadelphia Eagles? That's what it always comes back to is like when you lost those tough games, and we're going to get into a conversation about that here in a minute as well. When you lost those tough games last year, you went 1-5 in your division. What caused you to go 1-5, right, in those games? We already talked about it. Spoiler alert, it's because we kept turning the damn ball over. So why are we turning the ball over? Typically, it's either because the quarterback's making bad decisions or he's being pressured into throwing picks. I think both were a little true. So you go to the fast forward to the Philly game. Why did you lose? You lost because your offensive line completely crumbled against the best defensive line and arguably the best defensive line in football. That's what happened. So who gives a rat's ass about going and getting another edge defender when you finished second in the league in run defense and you finished 8th in EPA per pass? So your defense is in a good spot right now, right? So what did you need to shore up? You need to shore up your offensive line. That's what you need to do. Now, Jordan Morgan being healthy, if he's healthy this year, that's going to help. And Goody covered the bases by going and getting Aaron Banks. Whether you think Aaron Banks is a good signing or not, I mean, only time will tell. Goody thought, this dude is at the upper echelon of the offensive line in the league. We need to go get this guy. So, I don't know. When you look at the decisions that Goody made, it lines up with everything that I believe around the team. And what I mean by that is last year people were saying cornerback's one of, if not the most important positions on the defensive side of the ball. And I'm going, I don't even have it listed as tier 2. You guys understand that, right? Like tier 1, defensive tackle, and edge defender. Tier 2, mock linebacker, and post safety. And both of those are interchangeable now. The mock can play will, the will can play mock. The post, the free safety can play post. The strong safety can play post. It's very, very interchangeable. But the point is, you want to build out the center of that defense, guys. I don't even have cornerback listed as a tier 2 position, and it seems to line up with how Goody feels about roster building as well, whether it's right or not. When you look at everything across the league, like look at what Fangio and the Philadelphia Eagles did last year with their DB room. They didn't go out and pay a bunch of money for DBs. They had 2 rookies in the lineup. You know what I'm saying? So they didn't prioritize it from a sense of that needs to be our largest cap hit, you know? And again, I always run it through the filter of you want to know what's most important to these GMs, where are they spending the majority of their money at, you know? Their money and you know, yeah, draft capital comes into play as well, but mostly money, in my opinion. So, all right, moving along here. Jordan Schultz put this out. Now, this is just a little behind the scenes look at kind of how everything unfolded. He sent this to me in a DM about midday, and I tweeted it out immediately. Sources: the Packers and the Bills held trade talks this offseason centered around cornerback Jaire Alexander, but talks ultimately fell through and Buffalo moved on. It's unclear if the Bills will revisit things now that Alexander's been released, especially since they spent a first-round pick on Maxwell Hairston, but they were a team that had shown real interest. So I think that ship is already sailed, unless, of course, Jaire's market is completely in the tank and you can get him for $3 to $5 million. I could see Buffalo going, heck, let's just go ahead and shore that all the way up, right? Let's go ahead and shore it. So just wanted to mention, though, that Jordan Schultz did report that the Bills were one of the teams that was interested. Now, why didn't they trade for him then? Didn't have nothing to do with draft capital. I guarantee you it was, if Jaire's not willing to work that deal, we're not going to pay him $17 million this year. That's crazy. Essentially, the way the deal was going to work, guys, is if he made the roster, right, and he got hurt and went on IR, he's getting the full $17 million. That's how that was designed. And that's why the Packers were looking to restructure that to where they could protect themselves. And I want to say this. If we were to look at this from a different angle, I kind of feel like, and I'm just simply speculating as a stupid fan, it kind of felt like as soon as the season was over and Jaire made those comments in the locker room to the local media that I'm not talking to anybody, I'm not going to be here next year anyway, I ain't got nothing nice to say, I ain't got nothing good to say. It kind of feels like the exit interview was Goody going, hey, man, if you're going to be back, we got to do something about this contract because you have cost us a lot of money sitting on the bench. And I wonder and kind of feel like there were times that they thought he could go, he could play. Matt LaFleur got frustrated as hell last year, the year before as well. I wonder if they felt like the team doctors felt like he can go and Jaire was pulling back a little bit. Now, that's speculation, but I don't know, man. As everything was unfolding today, I kept finding myself kind of coming back to that. Like, I wonder if there's a little bit of that going on, you know, that they felt like, okay, if we make it more incentive laced in terms of the contract, where he has to have a certain amount of snaps. He has to have a certain amount of games he's playing in. And he's not just going to go out there and, okay, well, I'm hurt or I'm getting paid anyway type thing. I wonder if a little bit of that came into play. And here's the other thing I want to roll out, or I don't want to roll out as well. If Jaire goes and hits the market and nobody has any offer for him, I don't think there's like a 0% chance of him returning. I think it's very, very, very low. But what if he goes and hits the market and the other teams say, you know, they offer him half of what let's say that the Packers were going to say, we'll guarantee $8 million of it. And then you can make the full 17 if you play it every game. Let's just use that as just an example. And then he hits the open market and the market's just $4 million. He may come back to the Packers and go, hey, that deal's still on the table. And why would the Packers not offer that deal? Right. Again, I think it's highly unlikely that happens, but that's another angle too. If we can all be mature and not hold a grudge against each other, how this whole thing unfolded, because it kind of felt like Jaire was calling their bluff, like, hey, I'm going to make them cut me. I'm showing up to mini camp, and that's why he was cut today. You guys remember us talking about that? We nailed that. Absolutely crushed that. That, I don't know if hypothesis is the right word. Prediction, I guess you could say, is like him saying he was going into mini camp. There were people on Twitter running victory laps like, he's coming back. We told you. And I'm like, I don't know, guys. Let's chill out a minute, because that now forces the Packers' hand. So I don't know, man. We'll see exactly how the rest of that unfolds. Moving along here, though. Potential landing spots for Jaire. Right now, they're saying the Philadelphia Eagles, Los Angeles Rams, Minnesota Vikings, Baltimore Ravens, Carolina Panthers, Las Vegas Raiders. Now, notice Buffalo Bills are not on that list because they spent a first-round pick on Maxwell Hairston. That's probably going to deter them a little bit. However, if they could get him for pennies on the dollar, they'd probably want to add Jaire as well, you know. But Philadelphia Eagles make all the sense in the world to me right here. Carolina, obviously, we know the coin toss situation. It could be one of those things where he obviously would want to go back home. I wouldn't be surprised with that at all. But we'll kind of see where he ends up landing. If he lands in Minnesota, I've seen people go, "Oh, he better not go to the North." I could care less, guys. You guys know how I feel about this. You either got a good team or you don't. If you don't think you got a good team, you got bigger problems than worrying about if a guy who couldn't stay on the field healthy is going to come in and beat you. He could sign with the Vikings and dominate. He could go out there and shut down our number one receiver, whoever that may be. And that's not the end of the world. I don't worry about that stuff, man. He's going to land somewhere, and if he wants to try to prove it, and Minnesota probably the good spot to go, right? If he does, then let's go out there and kick his ass. That's the way I feel about it. I don't understand the whole, he better not land in Minnesota. I don't think coaches operate like that either. I don't think Jeff Hafley and Matt LaFleur and his whole coaching staff sit back and go, I hope he don't sign with Minnesota. They're probably competitive as anybody and saying, I hope he does sign with Minnesota. Let's go out there and cook him. I don't know. That's just kind of how I look about that. But anyway, hey, fam, I see you changed up there a little bit, right? Zach Tom will not be re-signed by 2/15/26. Imagine that. Before free agency, right? You lost that energy, bub. You lost that energy real quick. So, of course, they might let him test the market, but he's going to end up being a Packer. There's no doubt in my mind there. If you truly don't think so, then let's get that dozen of donuts on the line there. All right. So here was the press release from Goody. All right. So Brian Gutekunst issued the following statement, quote, in his 7 seasons with the Packers, Jaire established himself as one of the premier players in the NFL at one of the game's most challenging positions. His contributions to our organization were felt on the field, in the locker room, and in our community, and he will be missed. We appreciate all he gave, and we wish him all the best moving forward. So classy, obviously a very, very classy statement there by Goody, and that does kind of feel like they're moving on. There's probably very, very, very little chance that he would go test the market and Packers actually gave him the best deal. If I had to guess, maybe the deal they offered him was an extreme pay cut, something like, $4 or $5 million, something like that. Maybe what the fair market value, is. So AFAM says we need to pick a date. AFAM, it's real simple, bub. We were very clear on these stipulations. We said Zach Tom will re-sign with the Green Bay Packers. You said Zach Tom will not re-sign with the Green Bay Packers. Now you're saying there has to be a date that it's done by in order for it to be. No, get out of here with that crap. All right. He says per AFAM's legal team. God, I love this dude. I try to hate AFAM so bad, but it's impossible. All right. Moving along. I put a poll question up. This is what I was talking about. I put, Packers fans, do you agree with the Packers refusing to pay the remainder of Jaire Alexander's full contract? Yes, I side with the Packers. No, the contract was fine. So 75% of the fan base, as of 5 o'clock my time, there were 144 votes and out of the 144 votes, 75% of the votes said they sided with the Packers. So seems like it's pretty unanimous. Now you look at some comments on Twitter and you would think that it was quite the opposite. And again, some people in the chat, as Bates said from Whoville in here earlier as well. So, all right. So again, that's just kind of the breakdown of the Jaire situation up to this point. Now, we're going to shift gears, but we're going to stay on topic, but shift gears a little bit and jump into coverage conversation here, okay? And I want to give a shout out to our Patreon group, and specifically Greg Rice asked this question. You can see right here at the top of the page. Since we know Jai is gone, I'm even more concerned with our cornerback room. Please review the cornerback grades in the final game versus Philly. If you feel super industrious, add the last losses to Detroit, Minnesota, and Chicago. So you said grades, and I'm assuming you're talking about PFF grades. Now, you guys know how I feel about PFF grades. We use it. I give PFF grade updates on this show every single week during the season. But again, there's many times that I look at the grades and I go, boy, I wish I had some tape to back that up. I wish they would show we gave a -2 on this specific play or a +1 on this specific play. It's like you're arguing or you're debating with someone that doesn't even truly exist, right? It's like there's nothing there to go, here's what I seen. It's just simply, here are the grades, right? And that's why I have a hard time with it, because they don't earmark the individual plays. They just throw a grade up there, and that'd be real easy to just kind of mail it in, if that makes sense. So let's start here. First of all, I want to say this. He asked specifically about PFF grades from the Philly game, right? The coverage grade in the Philly game was 74.4. If you guys remember, we held Jalen Hurts pretty well in check in that game. The defense played outstanding. It was the offense that could not put anything together. Again, why are we so concerned with losing a cornerback who, by the way, the knock on him was he wasn't even on the field last year. He played, once again, 50% of the snaps, or less than 50, whatever it was. He's played less than 50% of the snaps, I think they said, over the last 4 years. Guys, that is insane. Bill Belichick, Bill Walsh, 101 is the two most important abilities a player can have is availability and accountability, right? Now, again, you guys know how I felt. I wanted Jaire back. I felt like the team was better with him on it. I would have been okay with leaving the contract the way it was. It wouldn't have been the end of the world, but I can also understand where Goody's coming from and wanting to get some of that money back as well. Availability. What would you grade? Everybody in the chat, as quick as possible. Get ready to answer here. A to F. What would you grade Jaire's availability the last 4 years of his career here? The last 4 years, right? What would you grade his availability? Because I would give it an F. Like, D, I'm seeing, here we go. Let's go to the chat here. Holmes says F. Bates says D. Deadfish says D. I can understand a D as well, right? Dang. G-Dog Brawls 233 said a B. All right. That's surprising. Joseph said C-. Coach Lynn says D-. That's right there where I'm at. Zacchaeus Earl says F-. All right. Sam, the Packer fan, or Sam _ Packer fan says C. All Good says F-. Mike Berry says D. Austin says 50% is an F, guys. Come on, get your head out of here. But AFAM says incomplete. Zacchaeus said, nah, I give him a Z. Ed Madden says D, right? For the last 2 years, Joseph says F. Very, very specific there. I like it, right? So if we give him a D to an F in availability, now let's talk accountability, okay? What would you grade him in accountability? And what does accountability mean? To me, it means a number of things. It means playing within the scheme. It means being accountable to your teammates, right? You guys remember last year was the first time that he came to OTAs, first time in a while. If I remember correctly, the previous 2 years he skipped out on OTAs. And he came last year with Jeff Hafley rolling into town, right? That's accountability, in my opinion. Like, you don't have to be there, but if you want to be accountable to your teammates, accountable to the scheme, accountable to your coaches, you should be there. So he skipped out on that. He got suspended because he wanted to be a captain, just self-appointed captain, so he missed the game for being suspended, right? That's an accountability issue. Let's talk about what was the other thing I just had on the tip of my tongue here? Let me think. You had the suspension thing. You had the other thing. That wasn't the first time he had an issue with not being a captain. You guys remember the year before the team picked the captain. His teammates didn't vote him a captain. And he got mad over that. So I feel like that falls under accountability. Accountability also is your performance on the field. I think we would all agree he's a really good player on the field. I think he's a number one caliber cornerback. I believe that. However, it is what it is. Let's see what everybody's saying in terms of accountability. I think we're picking up right here. Joseph says F. I think that's a little harsh, Joseph. I would probably go B to C, but hey, respect your opinion. There you go. Holmes says B-. I think that's very, very fair. Chris the Casual In says D- in accountability. Okay. Ed Madden says D. Let's see. G-Dog Brawls 233 says B. Man, you're really high on him then, man. So you think he was accountable and he was available. So, all right, there you go. So let's look at these coverage grades. Again, against the Philadelphia Eagles, 74.4. Now, let's compare apples to apples. Let's go all the way back to week 1, the last time we played the Philadelphia Eagles. Jaire was playing in that game. He was not playing in the wild card game where we got a 74.4 coverage grade. And this is if you believe in PFF. I don't think it's everything. The coverage grade in week 1 when Jaire was in the lineup, 51.2. And I know you're thinking, he got an interception in that game, Clayton. He did. He also probably got a negative mark because he broke off of his – he literally completely left his zone wide open and just broke off into the end zone to break on the ball, right? That's going to give a negative mark. But nonetheless, Jaire finished that game with a 40-something, in the 40s coverage grade. So if we're comparing apples to apples, both Philadelphia games, our coverage was better without Jaire in that specific game. And again, the question was specifically asking about the Philadelphia Eagles game there in the playoffs. All right. So it was also asking, if you want to go a little bit further, let's look into the NFC North games. Okay. Against the Chicago Bears in week 18, our coverage grade was a 69.6. Not bad, right? It was horrible against the Vikings of 44.9. And then if you go up to the Detroit Lions in week 14, it was a 61.7. Now you're getting into the bad territory again, right? Against the Bears in week 11, it was 55.7. That is bad. Against Detroit, it was 59.9 in week 9. And I think that was the Vikings earlier in the year, 57.1. So PFF said we played really bad coverage against the NFC North teams. Now we need to go back, and you guys might be able to fact check it quicker than me in terms of whether Jaire was playing in those games or not. I will say this, though. If you key in on the last 4 games of the season, really the last 5 games of the season, where Jaire is missing the games, look at our coverage grades, guys. Seattle, 82.8. New Orleans Saints, 75.3. Vikings, 44.9. Really bad. Bears, 69.6. Not horrible. And then 74.4 against the Super Bowl champions. If that's how the Packers graded out their coverage, hell, if you went 3 games before that, you got San Francisco 72.9, then a 63.6, 61.7. They played their best cover games, most consistent coverage games in the back half of the season when Jaire was missing. He went back out. What game was it, guys, that he got hurt originally? It was Jacksonville, right? So yeah, Jacksonville, he got hurt in that game. So you had your best game at an 87.0 against the Arizona Cardinals. I'm assuming he played in that game, but he may not have. It was weird all year because he was like, one week he was available, the next week he wasn't, and he tweaked the injury in Jacksonville, and then tried to come back. He tried to come back. What was it, the Chicago game? At Chicago, he tried to come back, and then they end up having to pull him. And then from that point forward, your coverage grades without Jaire were 72, 63, 61, 82, 75, 44, 69, and 74. So hopefully that answered the question there for Greg Rice. Now let's dive into them individually. It's a little bit hard to see on the screen. I'll try to read it off to you. Looking at the coverage grades for Carrington Valentine, let's key in on the last 5 games of the season, okay? Because those are the games where Jaire was out or whatever. Seattle, 90.4. Then next week, New Orleans, 70. I think it's a 78.2. Next week, Minnesota, 70.9. Carrington Valentine, right? And then Chicago, 72.9. And then he did struggle against Philly at a 47.3. However, it is worth mentioning, even with that grade, he only gave up 38 yards receiving, Carrington Valentine. You're seeing what Goody and them are seeing right here. 90, 78, 70, 72, and then that 47, only giving up 38 yards, however. They probably looked up and said, damn, Carrington playing just as good a ball as Jaire is right now. And it seemed like he did ramp it up at the end of the year. And again, most of the time you got to look at these players and go, hey, it's a half the season top thing. They like to break it down in quarters and grade players through the quarter of the season. 4 games, 4 games, 4 games, 4 games. Back half of the season, Carrington played his best football. So that's worth mentioning. Keyshawn Nixon, in that Philly game, it was a 60.2, is that what that? Yeah, 60.2. And then the week before, 60.3, 49.8, 51.5, 53.6. His best game was at Detroit, 84.8. So Keyshawn had a stint there from week 12, 13, and 14 where he was an 84, 73, 84 coverage grade. So you're seeing the ceiling for Keyshawn is 84 on the year. But the floor, unfortunately, is probably the Minnesota game, 43.6. So he really struggled against the Vikings, grading out in the 40s in coverage both games. Moving along to Javon Bullard. This one might surprise you guys. Again, I think he played his best football in the slot, all right? And let's look at that, and hopefully we could key in on it here. Let's go to the last 5 games of the season. Playing strong safety, a 53.5 coverage grade. Me no like you that, Jan, right? And then he jumped over into the slot against the Detroit Lions in week 14, 37.5. Yuck, right? Then you go to fast forward to week 17, he's playing safety again, 41.1. That's horrible, right? And then against Chicago in week 18, 71.3, playing the slot, and then, of course, a 76.6 against the Philadelphia Eagles in the wild card game. So two of his top 4 coverage grades, he being Javon Bullard playing the slot, came the last 2 games of the season. So that showed a little bit of promise. Now, his best game of the year was playing slot corner against San Francisco, where he had an 87.8 or 87.0. The moral of the story is his highest graded game on the year was an 87 where he played slot corner. Okay. His lowest on the year was slot corner against Detroit. And then he finished the year with 71 and a 76 PFF grade. So, and again, is Javon Bullard going to play the slot this year? I don't know. It kind of feels like it's going to be Nate Hobbs in the slot. I could be wrong. But when we're in the nickel, he'll play in the slot. You're going to have Keyshawn on the outside and Carrington on the outside. I feel really, really good that it's going to be Carrington and Keyshawn on the outside, Nate Hobbs in the slot. When you go to your base, probably going to be a camp battle to determine is it going to be Carrington Valentine or Keyshawn Nixon playing on the outside when you're in your base 4-3. And with that being said, I think they would probably lean toward Keyshawn Nixon playing on the boundary in that regard. Jerry with the super chat. Thank you so much, Jerry. We appreciate you. Great Carrington stats for the final games. A workplace Valentine for love. Oh, I like it. Valentine for love. Love it. Yeah, again, I was very low on Carrington his rookie year. And this is a reason why we should kind of pump the brakes on rookies. And if they hit the 60s, it's like, in terms of PFF grade, typically pretty good. He was also, if I remember correctly, I want to say he led the team in passer rating when targeted, according to NFL Pro. So Carrington, pretty solid performance there last year. And his grade improved from the 50s, and it jumped into the mid-60s last year, I believe, which I know it's a sophomore year. It's not his rookie year, but still not bad. Not bad for a second-year player there. Taking that, you're looking for that incremental growth, and that's what you've seen in Carrington, in my opinion. I want to apologize in advance. My wife just pulled in. She has not been here for 4 days. She just got back from Chicago. You're going to hear these dogs lose their mind when they find out she's downstairs, and there's nothing I can do about it, okay? So just if you're listening with earbuds, you're on the pod, be ready to yank them out of your ear because it's going to get really bad here, and it's going to sound like somebody's breaking into the house. So, all right. Thank you, Jerry, for the super chat. Next, Jaire Alexander. Let's look here. Is this not hard to look at, guys? Like, seriously. Look at how little he played last year. So it was weeks 1, 2, and 3. And then he came back in weeks 6, 7, and 8. Then he popped back in for 1 game in week 11, and then he was done for the year. His PFF grades. Look at this one, week 1 against Philly. 45.9. And if you're going, okay, PFF isn't everything, I agree with you. However, go back and watch A.J. Brown absolutely cook him in man coverage. I got so tired of hearing, Jaire needs to follow the number 1. Jaire needs to follow the number 1. Well, you got to play man coverage if you're going to do that, first of all, okay? They were in man coverage. He followed A.J. Brown. A.J. Brown cooked him on a double move. It was horrible, absolutely horrible. And it's funny because some of the sports talk junkies were blaming Bullard for taking a bad angle on the tackle. That has nothing to do with Jaire getting cooked. They were playing single high man. He bit on a double move underneath. We've seen it over and over and over. It worked out in Tennessee with the pick 6, but I remember watching that from the stands going, boy, he was not supposed to jump that route. Glad he did. When it works, you cheer. When you get cooked by A.J. Brown on biting on a double move, you're ticked off about it. So here was Jaire's PFF grades. Again, availability was absolutely horrible. Nobody's arguing that, right? 45, 69, 90, that was at Tennessee, 82 against Arizona. Then he drops to a 59 against Houston, 72 against Jacksonville, 65 at Chicago. I'm sorry, man. That I don't look at those grades and go, boy, he's way better than Carrington Valentine. He's definitely better, but he's, a better, what am I trying to say here? He's a more seasoned vet, So, yeah. All right. So that was Jaire's numbers. Now, again, why am I not overly concerned about the cornerback? I've seen people talking about the cornerback room like they're one of the worst in the league. Keep in mind, Jaire only played weeks 1 through 3. Then he came back in weeks 6 and 7 and 8, came back in week 11, and then missed the rest of the year. So this whole thing that they're going to be horrible without him, guys, we've already seen how they look without him. We've already seen it. He was the worst graded coverage grade of our entire cornerback room in week 1 against Philly. So keep that in mind. This is why I'm not concerned. EPA per pass last year, the Green Bay Packers were 3rd in the National Football League in EPA per pass. That's expected points added. Okay, 3rd best at a minus 0.13. The only teams that were better were the Philadelphia Eagles at minus 0.17 and the Denver Broncos at minus 0.18. That's a top 3 passing defense, according to NFL Pro EPA per pass. All right, moving along. Yak over-expected plays a big role as well, right? Yak over-expected. The Green Bay Packers finished 3rd in the league, only allowing plus 144 Yak over-expected. That was 3rd best in the league. Once again, top 3 in that pass defense category. Now, yards per pass play is kind of that efficiency, right? Like how efficient are you at stopping the pass? So yards per pass play, it's exactly what it sounds like. Every time your opponent drops back and throws the ball, how many yards are you averaging giving up? Okay, that includes it's not just the completions. That includes the incompletions. You round it all down or average it all up, right? The Philadelphia Eagles were 1st at 5.1. Then the Broncos, the Texans, the Chargers, the Jets, the Seahawks, the Dolphins, the 49ers, the Titans, the Commanders, and the Green Bay Packers. So the Green Bay Packers were tied for 9th best with the Titans, Commanders, and the Vikings last year. And again, that statistic was yards per pass play. So if you go to EPA per pass, we were 3rd. Yards per pass play, we were not. This according to NFL Pro. Pro Football Focus had it at 8, so it was actually a little bit better. I went with the lower number here to kind of balance things out and give you worst case scenario. With that being said, I'm not overly concerned with the pass defense. I'm not. Just like I wasn't concerned with the pass rush last year. Because, again, it's one thing if you turn on the tape and you go, man, they just can't get any pressure. It's another thing when you turn on the tape and you see them keying in on the run and protecting the rush lanes. And, of course, you're going to have the yards per whatever, or I'm sorry, the time to hit, the time to the quarterback or time to throw is going to be up when you're keying on our rush lanes and you're not just pinning your ears back and going after the quarterback. But the other thing that happens there, the byproduct is you finish 2nd best in the league in rushing defense with yards per attempt allowed, yards per carry allowed. So, again, another huge factor. Now, what is the most important stat? You guys know I talk about this all the time. Outside of points allowed, what's the most important statistic you can have in football? It's turnover differential. Well, you can't have a good turnover differential if you're not forcing turnovers. Last year, the Packers were 3rd best in the league, averaging 0.9 interceptions per game. We were top 3 in takeaways in terms of interceptions. All right. We were top 3. Here they go. They're about to get loud. Lincoln's the first one to recognize it. I'm ready to hit the mute button to try to save y'all's ears. Now, all right. I got to wait a minute. He's still checking it out. He's like, somebody's downstairs, dude. So we finished top 3 in interceptions. We finished top 3 in All right, I apologize. Let me shut this door real quick. Give me just a second. All right, we're back. Wasn't too bad, hopefully. Like a well-oiled machine over here. So again, EPA per pass, we're top 3. Yards per passing attempt, we were or yards per pass play, I should say. We were 8th on PFF, 9th NFL Pro, and then we were 3rd in interceptions. Why are we freaking out about the DB room? Somebody help me with that. Because, again, is the team better with Jaire on it? Yes. That's why I said I would be okay with paying that contract. You guys understand, I would have voted no to that. I would have voted no to the poll question I put out earlier. And I was really surprised that the majority of the Packer fans were, yes, I side with the Pack. I think it's awesome because I wasn't like so crazy in, at one angle. I wasn't so crazy at one angle like, yeah, you need to bring him back no matter what. And I wasn't, yes, I side with the Packers fully. I can understand both sides of the argument, but I was thinking, you know what? Why not let him play this year out? And if he stays healthy and he's extra motivated and he goes out there and gives you a great performance, you can move on next year if you want to, right? You can go that route. So, is where it is. So Greg Rice is spamming the hell out of this chat. Clayton versus Philly. CV was targeted 7 times. There were 6 completions. Which Philly game, bub? Be specific there. Which one you talking about? And please don't spam the chat like that, man. That's ridiculous. All right. And try to be nice about it, but we're trying to stay on topic and cover all these analytics, all these statistics. And when you spam the chat like that, that's a little frustrating. Which game are you talking about, man? Let me know. Let me know. All right. Which game are you talking about? Week 1 or the playoff game there, Bo? Greg Rice. Maybe we'll come back to it. Okay, this is why I can't just take certain questions like that on the fly sometimes too. So anyway, that is the coverage breakdown and why I'm not overly concerned. Again, I think the team would be better with Jaire on it, but if you're at Pro Football Reference, well, we're talking about EPA and advanced analytics and watching the tape and this and that. Like, if we go to, let's do this real quick. Let's go back up. Shouldn't even probably be hitting on this. So notice here at the bottom, right, at Philly, that's the playoff game. 4 targets, 4 receptions. So that's 7 of 8. Not sure. Maybe PFF got it wrong. They're showing 38 yards there. Is what they're showing. If I were to go to NFL Pro, I don't think I've got it pulled up. I'm not really understanding why we're hung up on that one game too. Like that's, I don't know. It just seems a little. Let's see. Let me go to. Give me just a second. We should be wrapping this segment up, and I just want to check real quick if we can get the NFL Pro. Show all games. Hopefully it'll pull up. Eagles. Yeah, I can't get it to load. Not on the fly like this with NFL Pro. So, yeah, if Pro Football Reference may be right, I don't know. But how many yards is it saying he gave up? That's the other thing too. Like Pro Football Reference, it comes down to charting these too, Greg. We played predominantly zone last year. If you're playing zone defense, someone's got to make a determination of should that target and that catch go against him or on the safety. That's another thing that comes into play. So that's why these are important. So, yeah. Greg Rice says 66 yards. So Pro Football Reference is saying 66 yards and PFF is saying 38 yards is what they're showing. So there you go. All right, let's see. Reef says Valentine was beat 40 yards by a tight end. He was covering a tight end. That's one, like, was that like a man? Was he man coverage on a tight end or were we in zone? Anyway, can't have that much dead air, that's for sure. So, Holmes is asking, what am I looking up? I think we're pretty clear what we're talking about here, bud. CV got burned so hard by Philly in that playoff game. I'm so tempted to go to the tape real quick and try to find the targets. I'm really, really tempted because I don't, as a matter of fact, I'm trying to think of how many yards we actually gave up. Does anybody remember, if I can go back here, anybody remember how many yards, what's his name, passed for? Because I want to say it was like 122, if I remember correctly. Talking about the stiff arm. Oh, did he get stiff armed? Is that what? There you go. Bates. They passed for 131 yards. Evidently, CV gave up all the yards. That's another thing. Like, when you look at the Philly game, you look back at it. We didn't lose because of Philly's passing game, So, yeah, 131 yards looks like there. So, 200 total. Got it. Yeah, corners get cooked. Are we just yelling to yell at this point? Yeah, it kind of feels that way, Bungie. So, I guess what Greg's saying, let's get rid of Valentine. Valentine, he had the best passer rating when targeted last year, according to NFL Pro. 2 interceptions as well. I want to say he was tied for the and amongst the corners and interception lead there with Jaire. They both had 2. So yeah, there it was, 169 total rushing yards. Yeah, they ran the ball for sure. So there it is, Ron Sanville. Everyone remembers CV getting stiff armed twice. He's solid in my book. So there you go. That makes sense. All right, that explains it. So, all right, let's go do it for hour 1. For those of you listening on the pod, we will see you on the other side for hour 2. We are going to hit a couple other things. We're going to talk about Elton Jenkins. We got a little bit of an update there. I think it's good news. We're going to hit that on the other side. And then we will also dive into some NFC North talk if we have time. So we appreciate y'all. We'll see you on the other side. Appreciate it.